All right, everyone. My name is Trovarsi. My partner Alex, aka ALX 106, and we're here with the Sound Lab. And our special guest today is David Castellani. Um, and David is a producer. He recently just released a vinyl EP, Requiem. Pretty dope. I think hopefully I can get one before it sells out. I'll drop the link for everyone in the chat. And but he is the founder of the Noetic label, which is and he actually just did a feature on Dublab as well. And I know that some of you may or may not know, but he actually just recently started another company called Anti-Kulture, and they are releasing a sequencer. And I did talk about that in the past on one of our meetups. So I think some of you are familiar with that. And he'll get into talking about that as well after he kind of takes us through his setup and and all that. So David, I'll let you take it from here before you get into your performance.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be able to be part of this. Ever since I met Trovarsi, she's been so sweet in helping me kind of get integrated more in the scene and all the wonderful people that are in the Eurorack space. Um, Unfortunately, Requiem is already sold out, the LP. But we did such a small run. I don't know if you're familiar with the vinyl situation right now, but the vinyl presses are like crazy, crazy backed up. It's like a year before you can get them. So to not have to wait a year, we did a really small batch, but we might do another one, and maybe I might have one lying around somewhere that I can sneak you uh, uh,
Cool.
in the back.
Thank
But yeah, so just like you mentioned, I have a label called Noetic, and it's a label I started about a year ago. We've been releasing. It's been mainly focused on a lot of my releases, and I've been pulling in a lot of great remixers that people that I really look up to, people like Matrix Man, ETAP Kyle, Red Shape, Voice Key. And then at the same time, I've been focusing a lot more on the live modular performances, and then as well as launching Anti-Kulture, which is my modular company that I am working on with a few partners of mine. And if anyone's hasn't had a chance to check it out, it's called the Precision Disruptor, and it is a random-based generative sequencer that's kind of based on being able to make a few small, quick decisions, and then be able to go through a lot of different creative processes or creative choices quickly. Kind of similar to like the Melodicer, but with a little bit more control. And then also one of the cool things about it is that it will actually spit out the sequence on a 16-step sequencer at the top, so then you can go and fine tune, turn notes on and off, gates on and off, slides, accents, and change notes and octaves and stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it. And yeah, I'm just excited and hoping that the company does well and that the music keeps going forward and I get to keep doing what I love, pretty much.
Nice. Well, I dropped the link, so if people want to check it out, before you get into showing it in more details, and I dropped your other links in there. So if you guys want to take a look in the chat, but yeah, if you want to start off, I guess with the short performance for us.
Sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, make sure your mics are muted. So sick. Thanks, David. That was awesome.
There you go. How about that?
Yes. Good.
Sorry about that.
No, no worries. That was great. That was fantastic. I have so many questions.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I was about to say those exact words. Yeah.
All right.
um, where do you want to start? Like, I guess, do you want to just give us a, well, let's just start with the signal flow for just a moment. Like, just kind of take us through. Oh,
Yeah.
geez.
So this other camera that I'll switch, I'm going to hold it. It's going to be a little rocky and a little tough, but I will do my best. Does that work pretty much?
Yeah, no, that's great. Because then that way we can actually kind of see in through the cables a little bit what's happening.
Okay. So, yeah. So I guess let me start with kind of how everything runs. So, everything I have, all the channels are running separate, both from the Eurorack system. Then I have the Zox box. I have the Digitact,
Okay.
and then I have the Hydrasynth. Um, and then I also have the Mobius here, which is a sequencer for the Zoxbox, which
Okay.
is, a little bit overkill for live, but it also is so convenient and so fast that allows me to really play like really quickly. If you guys are familiar with this thing, it's beautiful. Let me slide this over
Do you
for you.
sequence directly from directly on that box, like when you're, or are you controlling
Yeah,
from somewhere?
yeah.
Oh,
So, hold on. Yeah, so you can essentially, as it's playing, see how you can see it just running across here.
yeah.
And then you can just go ahead and select. You can select anyone and just change the notes and turn them on and off. So it's like really quick. It's kind of like a per step editor for a 303.
Okay.
I heard someone say once that the person that designed the sequencer for the 303 hated humans. Just because it's kind of a long, clunky process, even though they've gotten so much better now, and it's really not that bad actually. But the Mobius for live situation is just so fast, so I've kind of fallen in love with and kept it. So now everything here, I have three hex mixers, and with the hexpanders, which I use mainly for the individual outputs. Um, so I have 18 channels coming from the system, going through these guys out into my sound card. These are all separate as my sound card, and then everything goes through Ableton. And I use Ableton strictly as kind of like a way for me to really clean up the signal. I don't send anything short of the MIDI clock to the system from Ableton, but otherwise everything is just going through the channels,
Okay.
which then I'm, EQing, compressing, grouping, just kind of treating it the same way I would treat when I'm working in the DAW to like finish a regular track. And then I have these two fader foxes, which, as you can see here, the numbers are labeled, and these numbers correspond to the numbers on the mixer here. Um, which then allow me to have individual sends for each of the channels. So I have a delay, a reverb, an auto pan, a secondary reverb, and a filter on each individual channel. And then some of them will get treated with some special stuff, like the hi-hats. I'll put like a vocoder on there, if you guys are familiar with that trick to kind of like open up the hi-hats and stuff like that. But it's just kind of an extra way for me to, if I wanted an extra filter on every channel, if I wanted an extra effect send, it becomes a lot messier, more modules. And then honestly, just being able to compress things properly, EQ them, sidechain the kick and the bass, group them, all the tricks that you usually do to really clean up a mix down. If I don't do that with Ableton, I find that I have a much harder time getting like a really clean, pumpy signal. Um, and so on one hand, it's kind of a give and take because I hate having to have a computer because it's such a pain, and it's always, besides all the extra cabling and all the nonsense, you
Right.
never know, a computer can always go at the wrong time and mess everything up. But at the same time, what I gain from right now, I really haven't found another way to be able to do it all just with the hardware. I've tried a few times, but I really wasn't getting the results that I wanted.
Let me ask you this then. Wait, before you move on from there, just
Yeah,
for
yeah,
clarity. So now you have the fader Fox, and those, when you say the send and return, you're referring to the send and return channels that are in Ableton.
correct.
But when you have these, are you utilizing the send and return on the bit on the Buffaco, like on the hex expander? Like, are you utilizing that and sending it through Ableton that way? Or like, how are you, or are you just not even using those as send and returns? You're just using the send and return in Ableton.
So I usually do use the sends and returns in the Buffaco, but I use them just as kind of like extra effects that I'll just leave on, not so much that I'm like opening and closing the sends
Got it.
type of
Okay.
thing. I'll use it as just when I want to put effects and I don't want it on the dry, I want the dry signal and I want the wet signal. So then I'll use the sends and return on the mixers in the Buffaco. But no, in Ableton, I'm just using the effects and returns to the digital returns with digital effects on them, with reverbs and in Ableton.
Okay. Okay.
So it's nothing's coming, those effects and returns aren't coming out of the sound card, going in to get processed and coming back. They're all just getting processed in the box.
Got you. Okay. So now how many voices are in your big case right now? I can kind of see through the cables a little bit, like just a few kind of hold. I see a Bitbox micro, but
as many voices as honestly, they're not all the way that my system's set up pretty much is I have my sequencers are pretty much down here.
okay.
So we have the circadian, short of my assimilator, which is all my drums. Most of my drums just come from one-shot samples that I use in the assimilator. Then I have the black sequencer back there. I have the mixer. Then moving up, I have the Usta. I have another circadian, which then is connected to the Bitbox, and that's kind of how I use for like a secondary like percussive sounds. Then I have the Symphonian. Sorry, in there somewhere.
Okay.
Um, and then on top of that, then the next row is mainly all effects and modulation sources. So there's a bunch of delays back here. I'm so sorry because I can't like hold the camera and the microphone and move them. Hold on. See if I can do this with one hand. Okay. So the Batumi, the dual can delay. Then there's the Effects Aid XL. Then this is a black fade by Erica, just a fader. The Magneto, the Echophone, the Mimeophone, the Reverb, X-Pan. Then these guys, talking about WMD, these things are pretty much one of my favorite modules. And as you can see, I have 6 of them. So these are the ADSR VCAs, 2-in-1. I love these things. I use these so much. And honestly, ever since I've gotten these, I don't even know why people make a VCA and an envelope separate from each other.
For real.
But then the rest are, so the Matrix here, which is just kind of helps me with mixing. And then again, just a lot of LFO type sources, the Maestro, Erica Synth's dual LFO. I got the Pure Arena here, Euclidean circles. I got the multiplicity multiple, and then some different clock division multiplication here. And then the performance mixer, and then here it's still another mixer, the Praga. Then I have a voltage block, a couple filters, and then from here kind of the voices begin, or the oscillators. So there is the Odessa, the Panharmonium, which I use with my didgeridoo, which I
Oh,
actually
okay.
don't have set up right now, but that's actually been super cool. So I'll run my didgeridoo through this, and it'll just analyze the frequencies and then re-trigger up to, I think it's 33
Is
voices.
that different? Is that, I think when I saw you play live, you had this other, was that the didgeridoo? You played the didgeridoo and you had this tap.
Yeah, so that's
What was?
that's called Ozum Bells is the company that makes it. It's called the Crown.
Okay.
It's, if you want me, I can go grab it. It's in the other room.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, at the end, so you don't have to
Okay.
break your flow, but just so they
Yeah.
could see it, because it sounded so cool.
Yeah, it's actually, it would take me a little bit to plug it in, and usually I plug it in through a delay, which I don't have right now, but I can show it to you at least.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and then pretty much the rest of them up here are mainly all just the oscillators. So you can see some stuff from Instruo. I got Dingus Tycho, a handful of the noise engineering stuff. I've been really getting into the DFAM lately, actually. Honestly, like out of all the Moog stuff that I've had in my life, this has probably become my favorite piece that Moog is, at least for me, that I've gotten my hands into. Then the RxMX, the DPO, the CIP, Manus and then this is my sequencer right here, the Precision Disruptor.
What is that one? What is that sequencer sequencing right now?
Right now, it's sequencing the baseline by Erica.
Oh, okay. That was like your, okay.
Yeah. So essentially the way that I kind of work everything, and not everything is being used right now, so it kind of depends. When I prepare my live sets, it takes me about a month of preparation to get it to where I want them to be. And this time around, this is the choices that I made. And the way that I work usually is I try to essentially group sounds in threes. So I'll have kind of like my drums, which are always there. So I have my circadian rhythms, which is, going directly into the assimilator. Then all those drums, so the first 6 channels are all drums. It's my kick drums. I have 2 main hi-hats on channels 2 and 3. So like my main off hat, and then like a secondary 16th note hat. Then I have 4 hi-hats that go into the Praga and get mixed down to 2 channels and come back down into channels 4 and 5. So then I split pan them left and right. So then I have kind of a way to save some channels. I can just kind of blend them up here. Just
Okay.
turn individual hi-hats up, so it gives me an extra 4 hi-hats to play with. Then my snare drums, and that's always kind of set. And I don't really mess too much with the drum sounds, short of changing the patterns a bunch as I'm performing. And then maybe I'll go in and kind of pitch stuff for gate and ungate sounds. But for the most part, I kind of keep my drums the same as far as the sounds. I
Okay.
am working about concepts of getting different drum sounds in there, but for right now, that's how I've been doing it. And then after that, the voices begin. So the first one in the second row here, so channel 7 is my bass. The way that I work my bass actually is I have just my DPO sine wave, which runs down here into one of the WMD VCA envelopes. And what I have is I have the black sequencer from Erica running 4 different CV channels into a CV mixer. And then I just take the output of that, I run it through a quantizer, and then the quantizer into the DPO. So now I have just like 4 different versions of CV, sequences coming out, and then I'll just blend them. And as I blend them, I just get different bass lines, which are all getting quantized through the symphonium, so I know that I'm always on key. And then from there, I just kind of freestyle the basses. And I found that that's given me a great way to kind of like get a bunch of different variation really quickly just using one oscillator.
I'm sorry. What did you say you're using for the mixer for that? The CV mixer?
It's this guy right here, the A135-2.
Oh, perfect. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a rad concept. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been really helpful. Actually, this is the first time I started doing it this time like this, and it's really helpful. Um, and then I can just go and just squash out the gates randomly, or just like turn these up randomly and just kind of vibe on it, and it's always there. And it's really cool because they add each other. So if you go, you can get up also kind of like some of that bleepy higher register stuff mixed with the bass lines for some of them. So it's cool.
Very cool.
And then for like my main lead sounds, what I do is usually I'll start with like one main lead sound, and then they all run through the performance mixer. So I'll have, essentially, the 8 channels here. These are individual left and right channeled out. So I pan them left and right. I take the separate outputs. I run those outputs into 2 separate channels, channels 8 and 9 in my mixer. So, all the even number channels on the performance mixer are going to come through 8. All the odd channels are going to come through 9. Um, and I just kind of start with the first channel. So I have the first channel running. And then to accompany that, then I'll go through, and with the bit box, I have essentially 8 sounds in there. And I'll start pairing them. So channel 1 in the performance mixer is going to go with the channel 1 rhythm and sound of the bit box. Same as also channel 1 in the Digitact. And those are on the next channels on 10 and 11. So essentially I know that channel 1 is going to go with channel 1 is going to go with channel 1. And then I essentially freestyle. So like I prepare them enough to know that they're going to jive with each other. And then I just kind of freestyle them. So just kind of pull one in, mess with it, play around with it, ease the other one in, and then just kind of mold the 3 until I feel like I've exhausted them. And then at some point I'll pull, most of them out, have maybe like one kind of filtered out still in, and then just move down to channel 2, and then just swap to channel 2, and I'll just go through the motions like that.
When you say
meanwhile,
move to channel 2, you just pull the fader on one and start
yeah,
mixing the
yeah,
next
I'll just pull the
voice
channel down.
that
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I'll pull the mixer down, or and a lot of times like I don't pull all 3 out completely, because it'll pull out too much. So I'll kind of like pull 2 of them out. One will still be in. Usually, to be honest with you, these tend to be more of like the lead sounds. So um, they're more like melodic content, more aggressive sounds. These are more kind of like percussive background sounds. So usually at the end of me kind of going through playing with the 3 sounds, usually I'll have this pulled out completely, and it'll be one of the percussion sounds that I know will still kind of jive, and then I'll just pull on the second one. But when I do that, usually, again, so with these, I have on each channel, as I was mentioning, they're all kind of copies of each other. So see these 8 and 9 right here are marked. These are the left and right channels of the performance mixers, the 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, whatever. And I have a filter here at the bottom. So usually I'll kind of filter them out, pull in the volume up, and then slowly just kind of like with the filter kind of like start teasing it in. And that's kind of how I do all of them. So like at a certain point, like I'll have all the filters down for all 3 sounds for the most part, and then I'll just kind of slowly jive them in one at a time, and just kind of like listen to them and find kind of sweet spots where they're working with each other, and then let one breathe and open, and then slowly pull that one out and pull the other one up, and so on and so forth. And through that too, I have I think it's the Native Instruments Replica XT delay
Oh,
on
okay.
each one of these channels with a wet, dry, and a time knob. And that also gives me a ton of shaping for each sound. So that's always a big part of kind of how I'm playing with them and how they're opening up and closing.
Okay. Very
Excuse
cool.
me. Sorry. So then, after that, we have the bass line, we have the kind of left and right channels from the performance mixer, I have the bitbox, I have the digitact. On 12, I have the joysticks here, which I didn't mess with earlier, but I have 2 joysticks here from Doper, which I love these things. These things are super, super fun. And so there's one over here, there's one over here. These are just plugged in to the Manus Satiritas. So they're just, just kind of wham, 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 opening and closing, which is fun, just a little extra performance.
God.
Then I have on 13 and 14, I have the left and right channel of the R bar. And this is also a big go-to thing for me because I always feel like it's important to have a sound that's not looping, that's not repeating. You know, I look at music a lot of times in kind of a very like methodical building block type of, more logical standpoint. And I found that there are certain things that will always enrich, a song. And for instance, one thing would be like a polyrhythm. And another thing would be something that never actually loops, like a granular source. And that's really because our brains are like pattern machines. They lock into the repetition of especially melodic content. And if you can find a few elements that make it harder for your brain to figure out where the loop is, the sound instantly becomes much more interesting. Now, of course, you have to be careful because, things can clash. You don't want too much of that stuff. But if you do it just right, it really adds so much background and texture. And the R-bar has just been just a really great tool for me to do that. Which then, I'll have just the different A through C. I'm sorry, A through, I don't know, there's even letters. There's like the Greek letters. So whatever, all 8 channels, with different recordings inside of there, and I'll just kind of switch through them and play around with the length and the spray and so forth.
Nice. Yeah, it's great
Um,
for that.
yeah, I love that thing.
Yeah.
And then last after that, which I just started using, is the Ludba, which I honestly have just gotten into using more again, which I just have a vocal sample on, which was on channel 15. But honestly, I'm not using it to its full potential right now. I just had like a vocal sample that was kind of looping in there. And then lastly, I have my didgeridoo channel, which is 16, which is, I'll just have my didgeridoo with a microphone, which I'll throw in to this guy, which will just turn it into 1/8 inch, and then I throw that into the panharmonium, and then that just goes back into my mixer. And that's pretty much all of it for Eurorack. Yeah, so then like what you see here, then, same thing I have. So then I have the Zox box here. I have the Hydrosynth here. Here there's some spaces for when I was bringing out my Iridium and my Digito. So I use the same setup in my studio. So in my studio, then I also have a couple other synths plugged in, but here I'm not using them live. Then a master channel, which I just have a master high pass and low pass filter, and then a master reverb that I can put on everything, which can do a really great job of blowing things up, but also you have to be really careful because it can make things really muddy too at the same time. And then lastly, the Osm Bells, which was that crown that you were talking about.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think that's
So,
pretty much it.
let's talk, like, so when you transition, I guess, like how you're saying that you use the fader Fox kind of blend them in, but so you have like what is that? The Fumana, is that, or the Usta?
Yeah.
And so are they just sequencing the various voices that are being patched through the performance mixer, and then as you change your song, you just bring it up? So is that, or are you going back and forth between these melodic sequencers? Like, how are you?
So the sequences are all sequenced, so they're already running. They're all pre-sequencing, and
Got it.
I will mess with the sequences, yes. So that's part of like once I have a sound in, you know, short of I guess the bitbox, I don't really mess with too much. It's because it's also just getting a gate.
Right.
But as far as the main sound, which is whatever is usually coming in the performance mixer, yes. Then at that point, once that sound's in, my main focus is on taking advantage of whatever modulation knobs I have in front of me to be able to open and close the sounds, and then yes, also play with the sequence as well. And yes, you're right. The Usta is sequencing pretty much all the main voices that are going through the performance mixer.
Okay. Oh, so it's sequencing more than one voice,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Throughout your
It's
set.
sequencing, it's
Okay. Okay.
sequencing 8 voices at the same time. Yeah, because it's got 4 channels, but it's got A and B, so really it's got 8 channels.
Gotcha.
So it's a really really great sequencer. I've really fallen in love with it, honestly. Um, I went to purchase. I was in Sweden actually when I went to visit my partner with Anti-Kulture, and I was trying to buy another sequencer. I
Mhm.
forgot what sequencer I was looking for, but they didn't have it at the little shop there. They did have a Colossus though, which was pretty cool, but I didn't get that. Instead, I got the Usta. Um,
So what are you
and
doing with the Erica sequencer? Because
the Erica
I forgot
sequencer
what
is doing all the bass lines.
the bass lines. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So this is just spitting out all the bass lines. And then the way that I'm doing it is that I have the 4 CV outputs
That's right.
are going into the mixer, and then I just have one of the gates, which is all just 16th notes, and that 16th note is going into the WMD, the ADS, RVCA. So then I have essentially these four knobs, which will change the bass notes or your CV inputs or whatever, and then I'll have one, continuous 16 roll that I can just turn on and off steps to change the rhythm of the bass line.
Got you. So I'm going to ask you the infamous question about tuning. Now, like, are you worried about what key you're in throughout your set, or did how do you deal with that? Like,
Well, honestly, I probably should be more than I am. I tune a few things religiously. I'll tune my bass, my DPO. I'll tune the Erica bass line because this thing is pretty wily when it comes to tuning. But then honestly, a lot of the other stuff I play by ear a lot. On one side it's techno, there's a lot of like weird dissonance and detuning stuff going on anyway.
right.
And then also, I tend to not have too much melodic content that's running simultaneously anyway. It's usually kind of like, besides my bass, which even then, with techno, it's not like a ton of melodic, movement in the bass. It's usually like one or two notes. It's pretty straightforward. Short of the 303, which gets obviously pretty melodic. But besides that, I kind of just play stuff by ear, it's so hard because like a lot of these voices too, it's like you start changing, the edge and the fold and, the balance and the width and the center of these oscillators, and it starts shifting the harmonic content so much that it's really hard anyway I think to really keep it in this perfect place. And not to mention, most of my sequences are not very melodic. They're mainly just like one note with like maybe one or two other accented notes throughout.
Okay.
And more of the movement comes into opening and closing and pushing, Of course, if I was making more melodic music, if I was making more kind of like house-driven music, stuff like that, it would be much more important for me to be focused on making sure
On
that everything's in
tuning and
tune.
stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So you tend to try to keep it pretty simple in the sense of, in terms of anything melodic or the melody, you're using like one main melodic-ish sound, and the rest sort of stays atonal or kind of filtered out so it can kind of sit within
Yeah,
that
yeah,
stuff.
and
Okay.
even that melodic sound's not really that melodic,
Got you.
It's pretty like straightforward, which I think is just a core techno music, it's kind of just like that. And it's freeing in one way, it's also kind of cheating in another way. I think that part of techno has come with, if you listen to a lot of techno records, when people started making this music in the 90s, or even like the late 80s, a lot of the people that were making this music weren't really musicians, and you hear that in so much of the music, and not even just in like things being detuned, but also just in like the roughness of how things are recorded,
Right.
and I think that's become a nostalgic and kind of like integral part of the quality of the music and just like a characteristic of what techno is, and I think that's why it's become so open for it to be kind of all over the place and experimental, Now, obviously, I am not a classically, melodically trained musician, but I have been making music for a long time. So like if I hear something that's, clashing, I'll obviously adjust it, and I do spend time when I'm picking the sounds and I'm preparing them with my finger on the tune knob until I find where it needs to be, but I'm not looking at a tuner when I'm doing it.
Okay. Very cool. Does anybody have any questions before we kind of switch over to the sequencer aspect, his sequencer? Feel free to unmute yourself if you do. You guys can hear me, right? Okay.
No questions. I appreciate the walkthrough. I really like hearing the choices you made and what you're getting out of them. So thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate taking the time to listen.
Yeah,
always
I
fun
think
to
that
share.
your setup, your set was more melodic than you let it out to be. It was really great. And as far as like the whole, dissonance and things like that, like in talking about house music in conjunction, or in opposition, I guess, I don't know. one of the things that I love about like house music is that it's like a lot of the old stuff was so sampler based. And one of the things about when you're using samplers is like whether or not that sample's in key, if it sounds good, it sounds good. And that's like a thing that techno embraces, that you're embracing. And so yeah, I mean, you're right on it with that, and just being like, you know, like if it sounds good, it sounds good. If I want to tune or need to tune, I will. But you know, there's a lot of that in all these styles of electronic music, and I think sampling has a lot to do with that, where it's like you're just sampling, you know, we're using a lot of analog voices and stuff, you know, especially now in modular and whatever. But back in the day, it was like in order to save space or whatever, save money, samplers were king, and it was like that's a big part of that sound. And you know, I think that just embracing, if it sounds good, it sounds good is what it's all about for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you know what? It's an interesting concept because if you're not like a melodically trained person, which I think a lot of people in this scene are, it's always you kind of have that question in the back of your head is like, can I hear if that's off tune or not? You know, and like you think you can hear it, and you're like, that sounds good, right? But like you're always kind of questioning,
Yeah.
wait, am I totally fucking wrong? If like someone that actually knows what the hell's going on is like, what are these people doing?
100%. And you know, there are those people who like have that perfect pitch and things really bother them. I'm a very melodically like inclined person, and I can vibe with something that's out of tune or whatever really hard, and then like especially like when I'm jamming, and then I'll come back to it and maybe it'll bother me, but if the energy's there, the energy's there, you know.
Yeah, totally. 100%.
Yeah, so then you have, I was just curious, so the Fader Fox things you have, those are the PC12s, like 2 of them?
Correct.
Okay, cool.
Yep. And I got them linked together through the Ethernet.
Nice.
They've
And
been
then
really, really helpful.
what sound card are you using?
So here in live, I'm actually using 2 Roland Studio captures,
Okay.
which are show them to you, which are just daisy chained together.
Yeah, okay.
So this is so far the best solution I've had that I've been able to find with 32 channels that I can bring with me. But I mean,
Damn.
I was going to ask that question too. I'm glad you
And is
asked.
it, they have like analog TS ins on the back or something, or is it DB25 or? Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, so I mean, these guys have gotten me through it for now, you know. That's another thing too. Honestly, that's something that I really need to focus on more and haven't had a time is just like all the conversion, you know, the AD conversion. Even in my studio, you know, it's something that I've really been thinking about a lot, and you know how much money to spend on something like that. Oh, oops, sorry. How much money to spend on something like that?
Big question.
Yeah, it is a big question. It's a big expensive one too, you know.
Exactly. You can get expensive really fast.
Right. So I don't know. Even in my studio, I have Motu the 16As, which I found that work really well. I have 2 of those, you know, ADATed together,
Right.
and they work for me. But yeah, it's just, you know, it's how to find the best solution to have 32 inputs to be able to drag along with me, you know.
Yeah,
Another
it's
issue I've
huge.
had too is power too. You know, is just figuring out power. Like the last show I played, I was performing and I started getting all sorts of kind of like little glitching in and out throughout the set. You know, 3 or 4 times, and I realized that the power was just like they weren't able to keep up with it. So I ended up buying these Furman. They're under the table here. These Furman like power adapters which regulate all the voltage
Nice.
and just make sure, and I have 2 of them, so to make sure that nothing glitches out because there's so much going on and I'm like dragging this stuff to, you know, random parties.
Totally.
It's just like they're plugging stuff in like gymnasiums and whatever.
Yeah. So when you play live, are you do you set up your system so the crowd can see it?
No. Yeah. I play with my back to the crowd.
Yeah, totally. Sick.
Yeah, which is honestly, it's also a blessing, to be honest with you. It allows me to kind of get in my groove more, you know.
Yeah,
Worry
for
about
sure.
watching people, worrying about
Yeah,
what
you know,
they're like standing there or what does it mean and all that.
I've really
Yeah.
realized that for me, being in a groove is like 90% of how the whole thing is going to turn out in the end. If I am just locked in and everything fades away, and even so, the in-ear monitors is something that I've been exploring more and more. And if I'm just focused and I hear everything that's going on and I'm not thinking about anything else, I can have an amazing time, and my performance is tenfold compared to if one little thing is like, whether it's a sound issue or someone is talking to me or something is happening around me and my brain gets sidetracked. I lose kind of the whole flow of everything. Because with since I'm overcomplicating things for myself here, compared to how a lot of people do this, meaning that there's
Tons
a
of
lot of
stuff. Yeah.
channels, a lot of things to go through. It's really important for me to stay on track and remember so many things, and like, that's probably why a lot of wise people that do this mentioned, keeping your system small is a better choice. You have a few things to think about and you just vibe on those few choices. But here I'm trying to push it through, and it's something that I'm trying to do a little bit more is, compete with a lot of people that are showing up with, CDJs, and they have, mixed and mastered music,
Yeah.
and they're dropping
Yep.
one track after the other, and those songs sound amazing, and the journey is up and down and it's changing. And so I want to be able to, play those time slots and get up to those stages. So that means being able to deliver a dynamic performance that has a lot of variety and can move a lot. And for me, that also means keeping track of where everything is. Even on a subconscious level, it's just like,
Mhm.
where's the vibe? When's the last time you took the kick out? When's the last time you blew up the hi-hats? When's the last time you removed the hi-hats? When's the last time, how long has that percussion sound been going for? How high
Absolutely.
has the energy been down? How long have we been, and like all these things. So like, it's so much that if my brain for an instant goes off into thinking somewhere else, then I lose the whole vibe. And then I'm like, oh shit. And then it takes me quite a bit to get back into the groove.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, for sure. The in-ear monitors is a cool thing. I've been wanting to do like in-ear monitors in a sub pack, and then it's like you do that, you are isolated. It is like 100% just you.
I know, I know. Actually, I was thinking about the same exact thing, the sub pack too.
Yeah.
If it wasn't so clunky and big,
Yeah,
I saw that now someone
They have a
they're making
backpack
like,
now, don't they?
they do.
yeah,
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 but
Yeah,
they've
yeah.
had the
still
backpack, but
pretty
I know
Yeah,
big.
yeah. But
don't they
even the
have like,
in-ears, it's just you're so
Someone's making something that's like a hockey puck that goes on your chest.
right. That's exactly what I was about to say. I saw that
Yeah.
too, and I was wondering if that one works as well, because I might try that. Just put it like under your shirt, and just
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Just a little haptic feedback would be nice.
right, because that's really what's missing from the in-ear monitors, is the
But
low.
it's also missing from stages in general. The
Sure.
subs are either under you or in front of you. And
Yeah.
so when you're playing through stage monitors, you don't get to feel it unless you're on a DJ's like a club stage that's used to DJs that put subs on the stage.
Yeah.
And then your anything vocal or anything microphone based, like your didgeridoo, is compromised because you've got subs on the stage,
Yeah. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
which is difficult.
Yeah. That's
So
actually been a huge hurdle for me as well as on any of the live mic input stuff. So yeah, both
yeah,
the didgeridoo and the crown that she was talking about earlier, the awesome bells, that thing.
yeah.
It's like it's so sensitive. I have to have the input so low, and I'm always riding the filter on it, just because if I keep it open for more than a second, I just like let it open sound and then close it. Like
Totally.
Right.
otherwise it's just like feedback and everyone goes deaf.
I have one more question that I think you might have covered, but I may have missed it. So the ribbon cables coming out of the front of the case, what are all those? What's the duty of all the ribbon cables?
Yeah, so what these guys do, these were a blessing, because so the first time that I
Oops.
brought this rig out, which was when I performed for a mix mag set that I did, um, so I set everything up and I had to, break down these three cases, and I couldn't because all the cables were connected from one case to the other case. So I literally spent 2 hours unplugging one side of each cable and writing down where they all went.
Yeah,
brought into
labeling
the
each thing. Yeah.
yeah, and then plugging it all back in. And after I did that, I was like, I'm gonna kill myself if I have to do this again. So then I found these guys, which are they're just like little bridge, like they're kind of like patch bay bridges, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, what happens is you have, hold on, let me put my hand here. So essentially, you have, you see it's labeled 1, and there's these 3, rows of inputs. Anything that I plug into any of these will go through this one ribbon cable and then come out down here out of these 3. So
Dope.
essentially,
Yeah.
I can
Is that
What's
an
the
ADAC
company?
module or?
yeah.
What is it? Who's it by?
It's ADAC.
Oh, okay. I have the
Cool.
HDMI ones. I haven't tried those yet, but they're supposed to be low noise. Have you had any issues with any noise with those?
I have had some issues where some of the channels are bleeding through, but it's only some of them for some reason. And if I just go into another jack, then it doesn't do it.
Totally.
But it's only been a couple of them that have done it. For the most part, it's been it's been behaving. And then so I
Nice.
have, yeah. So then I'll have like so 1, 2, 4, 3 here. So 1, 2, and 4 here, and then 3 is down here. So 2 of
Cool.
these will go to this case, 1 will go to the bottom case, and vice versa. So then now you can literally just pull all the cables up and just clack up the front, and you're done. And
Sick.
then all I got to do is just plug in these 6 ribbon cables when I show up, and they're good to go.
Yeah, I use the Doper one. So yeah, everybody's got some sort of trunk module. But that's super cool. I was just curious if that's what that was or if it was power or something. But yeah, that's awesome.
Maybe
Yeah,
we
I
could
mean,
do like a test, David, sometime. Because I picked up this Targon cable by Eviton Technologies. I don't know if
Yeah,
you
yeah.
see that.
I saw him at NobCon a few years ago. I've been wanting that one. That one's cool.
And yeah, I've heard some good things about it. It was recommended to me by this guy. His name's Cody. I think he's in the synth world, but he does a lot of pro sound, like for like big stages, like theaters and Disney and stuff. And he said that these had no noise issues. So I thought I'd try these, but maybe we could do like a little
Crazy.
comparison at your studio or something.
yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. So before we wrap it, can you show us the sequencer and just kind of bless you,
Yeah.
turn that on a little bit and just kind of just talk about it like.
Yeah, let me see if I can figure out how to do that for a second. Give me 1 second.
Thanks, Christian. I just saw the link.
Okay. I'm gonna try to see if I can do this while holding the mic and the camera at the same time. Okay. Yeah, so the way that it works essentially is that you have, we'll go on a clear preset here.
Kind of
So you have,
down to down a little bit.
oh,
There you go. Right there.
sorry, it's hard because
No worries.
let me get Brittany to help me. Hold on.
Okay.
Can you come on this side, actually? And just hold it. And can you get more straight? Oh, yeah. All right, her arms are going to start hurting soon, but that's fine. I'm going to put her to work.
Thanks, Brittany.
Thank you, Brittany. Okay, so essentially the way that it works is you have now the oscillator's probably not tuned, so we're probably going to get some weird stuff out of it. But you have a little mini keyboard here, so you see the D, so on and so forth. The white one is going to be the root note, so if you hold it, you can change the root note one to the other. And then you have octaves here. Now, if I just start sliding up the gate, it'll start randomly populating up top the gates. Let me change the octave down here. Is the volume okay on the synth?
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay. So the more you go up, the more you'll have all the 16 steps. And it just will randomly populate every single time the same exact seed, so in the same order, all the way up to the 16th notes. Then you have an accent, which right now is going into the accent input of the bass line. Then you have a slide, which I'll wait until we get some note variation. Now you have a note and octaves here. So for the note and octaves, if you start adding extra notes, like the G and G sharp, and I start putting up the notes, it'll slowly start including the extra notes. Same thing with the octaves.
Cool.
And then slide.
Very cool.
And then once you have this pretty much and you're happy with what's going on, you have these two disrupt buttons for the melodic or groove content, which is really just the notes or the rearrangement of the gates, the accents, and the slides. And when you press them, it'll shuffle all that content around, but maintaining the same notes and octaves that you've chosen, as well as the different parameters that you've chosen here with the sliders. And then lastly, you have presets here. So this is just kind of a way to save the patterns. So I can actually copy them. So I can copy, right now we're on this last preset here that's lit up, but I can copy and paste it. So move to this one, and then I can shuffle this one around or disrupt it. And then I can chain them really easily by holding the chain button. And it'll just shuffle through them. And then lastly, when you're on a specific pattern and you're pretty happy with it, but you want to, kind of dig into it a little bit more, you have the ability to manually turn gates on and off, turn on accents, slides, or hold a note. And you can see here in the screen, I'll tell you what note you have and what octave, and you can change that too. So you can kind of nitpick it and go ahead and just do what you want with it.
Very cool. The other thing you showed, which I've used, is where you can do the link, but you can select the chaining, where you can select multiple, like play it twice, play this one once. You can still do that, right, on it, or?
Yeah. So when you mean playing the presets like multiple times?
Yes, so you can say I want this one to play 2 or 3 times and go back and play this one and then go to play this other one. They don't have to be in sequential order in the preset list.
Correct. Yeah. So
great.
I can just do this essentially if I just hold last or chain. It'll just do all of them as many times. It's up to 256 times to compress
so
it.
cool. Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what order they're in. And then there's also a last functionality, so you can, have which right now there's a bug. Yeah, so we're just updating the firmware, and he just updated so that the last is not working. But you can also choose the last step. You can copy and paste. You have two undos. There's ability to lock sequence so that the faders don't do anything for performances. And then also in the menu, and again, we're just working on the final firmware here, but you have obviously clock sources, BPM, you have a clock divider, up to 8 times division and multiplication, direction, forward, reverse, ping pong. We're doing a shift, which we just added to, where you can shift the whole sequence left or right. So if you don't like where the 1 is, you can move it. Swing, gate length, and now we just added scales as well. I actually have this already implemented in my other one at the studio, but not here. And then you have 2 CV input destinations, which you can apply to any of the sliders, the note and octave sections, and the disrupt sections, along with polarity and amount.
Very cool. Question, with regards to the direction, like the ping pong and things like that, is that per preset or is that like a global?
Yeah, it's per preset.
Okay.
Yeah, along the same thing with the length and the division to everything. Yeah.
Nice. I dropped the link for it in the chat, and so what are you looking at, like in terms of, I know you said you're still working on the firmware, like just in terms of availability or?
Like 6 months ago. Yeah, so it's I'm sure as everyone that's been in this process knows, it's tough, but we are really, really close now. We are actually today and tomorrow assembling the first 30 units, which are kind of our pre-big batch production test. So before we go ahead and make 200 of them. So this is kind of our last final test just to make sure that all the hardware is good, that the supply chain, all the parts we're getting are working properly across kind of a larger scale. And so that's good. The hardware is done. The firmware, we're just finishing like a few final baby things on right now. Realistically, we're hoping to start shipping probably in September.
Okay.
It looks like at this point, yeah, because we want to take this time now, once we assemble these, to just kind of finalize the firmware test before we start sending these things out, and then, realize that we made a mistake. So,
Got it. Nice. Well, I'm sure I'm looking forward to that. Anything we can do to post and share and give people information on it.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Do you have an idea of pricing yet?
So we're probably going to be looking around $549.
Cool.
That is dope. That's really good.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And if you need beta testers, I'm willing to make that sacrifice.
I appreciate that. I'll definitely keep you in mind, because that has been one of the things that's hard as a small company, is not having a lot of people to test. We haven't even had, the functional units even asked, Trovarsi, I've been trying to get her a working unit now for a while, and she still doesn't have one in hand that's working properly, but I really do appreciate that.
Of course, anytime.
It's really killer. I'm super excited about it. When Trovarsi showed it off a couple months ago, my brain exploded. This is the sequencer I've been looking for.
Thank you. Yeah, it's like I wasn't even planning on getting into starting a modular company. It was just like after sitting in my studio one day, and I just kind of realized that something like this would be really, really useful in Eurorack. And it was just kind of one of those things. I was like, man, I really wish I had that. And then at the same time, I happened to have, a friend of mine who's an engineer and, has his hands into this stuff already. And I was like, hey, why don't we do this? And that turned into, 6 months and, a couple grand. And now it's 2 years later and, we spent all our money and way more than we were supposed to. And here we are, so we're hoping that this is going to get out into the world and work the way it's supposed to and give people a chance to be creative and have fun, because that's really what it is. So,
Project of love, but it is a great sequencer. I just like the immediacy of being able to come up with the ideas quickly, and chaining the presets was like my favorite thing when you showed that to me. I was like, this is really cool. Because
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, because you can get to have like really long and kind of like cool, evolving, it's interesting because you could literally like also with the CV and the disrupt, but keeping things in key, you kind of get this like Turing machine type thing that can happen with it too, but always staying in key, already quantized, and with the scales too, will be really fun to be able to let people kind of like lean into that. It's always an interesting concept when you're creating something that is making it much easier for people to get results. So it's a battle on one side, but it's also kind of the point of it, So I just hope that it's a tool that doesn't inhibit people from wanting to learn, how to do things properly, but also empowers you to, when you understand how to use it, to really kind of like speed up your workflow and to help you kind of save some of that creative energy and effort, and just have fun doing this, It's not supposed to be like a big challenge, it's supposed to be a good time. And like that's what it is for me, and get quality results.
Very
You
nice.
always need inspiration or something to play to. One of the things about this style of playing is that we're all a lot of times playing alone, so you don't have someone to like get that feedback from. And when you have a machine that gives you that some sort of seed that you can then play from, whether that be a sampler or a sequencer that's kind of like the other band member, that's a really valuable thing for sure.
Yeah, totally.
How many presets does it have in total?
So it's got 16
Okay.
slots. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, 16 slots.
Very cool.
Yeah. So we're excited. Now you're just trying to figure out, how to go from where we are to where you guys are. How do you go from one module to 1,000 modules and do it so graciously and so successfully and have so many great ideas? It's such a tough industry to be in. It's like
For
so
sure.
many creative minds.
Yeah, the manufacturing part's the hard part, man. Well,
Yeah.
once you get the ideas and a good engineer to work with, it's like, that stuff can flow pretty quickly. But then, and we all know supply chain's just like crazy right now. I mean, it's just really hurting everybody, and we haven't done trade shows mainly because we don't have products to show, because we don't have parts to put on said products, But yeah, that's like the fun and easy part. Once you like get that freedom, you start feeling those or learning about how things are made, and then it's like, oh man, the ideas come, but then it's like, the manufacturing part's is definitely the difficult part, and whether or not you're going to do it all in house or do it with a contract manufacturer, there's no shortage of headaches any way you do it. So
Yeah. Do you have any recommendations as far as that, like how much to take on in-house and how much to outsource?
I don't right now personally. I mean, like we do everything in house pretty much. Like we do all of our own. We do pick and placing, and we do and then we do hand assembly and stuff. And it gets expensive because we're paying local people livable wages, which we're stoked about. And that's a part of our values. That's what we want to do, and that's really important to us. And I honestly don't know if it's any cheaper to go overseas at this point. We've never done it, so we don't really know what that's like. I would say that like when you're starting out, especially, like getting stuff populated, like getting stuff to, like doing all the SMT somewhere else. And if you can do any sort of selective soldering or wave soldering, having that done, like that can really speed up your process. Hand assembly, doing that in house, obviously testing in house,
Yeah. How big are you guys? How many employees?
we have like 18 to 20. I think
Oh.
we're at, I don't remember right now. I think we're at 20 currently. But we do also do manufacturing for other clients and things like that. We do some white label manufacturing and contract manufacturing, and that's one of the reasons that we've been able to grow is we offered that a lot early on, and then over the past 5 or 6 years, I'd say we've been maybe a little less than that, maybe 5 years, we've been a lot more focused on the WMD brand because we're stoked on the ideas we're putting out.
Yeah, I mean, you guys make, the leaders in the industry. You guys have so many great modules.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys.
We'll get those. We'll get your ADSR VCAs replaced with javelins eventually.
I love those things, honestly.
Yeah. Oh, me too, man. They're so good. And javelin's cool because it's got an accent input. That's pretty much like the only difference. It's like a little bit more acid friendly.
Oh, nice, nice,
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, it's
Cool.
great.
Cool. Well, yeah, that was super fun. Thank you for being here and showing us what you're up to. That's really cool.
And thank you guys for wanting to listen. I really appreciate it. Anyone that's interested in, it's just me and my girlfriend here. She's so sick of hearing me talk about Eurorack.
Yeah, thank you, David, so much for coming on and showing us your concepts and your all of it, like your patching. The performance was great. Yeah, just thanks.
Thank you.
On that note, I'm going to stop the recording right now. So thanks, everyone.